That's my whole point. Why not give us a base budget of 961 or whatever the right number is, what you consider the right number, and then we can operate and make our decisions. Why do it in this bifurcated way that really is fooling the American people about what the defense budget is?
We're not trying to fool anybody, sir. It's two bills, one budget. We're working with OMB, and we feel very comfortable with the number of $961 billion.
Why don't you give us a straight-up budget for the Defense Department?
If you think that exchange was intense, what comes next will leave you stunned. And trust me, it only gets more explosive from here. Senator Angus King didn't walk into this hearing to play nice. He came ready to dismantle excuses, confront the spin, and demand answers Pete Hegseth could no longer avoid.
Senator King.
Mr. Secretary, I'm somewhat puzzled. I grew up in Virginia where Robert E. Lee was revered. I think when I was a kid, his birthday was a school holiday. But as I grew older and learned more about American history, I learned that he fit the classic definition of a traitor. He took up arms against his country. He broke his oath as a member of the United States Army, which he took upon entering his career at West Point. Why are you going through these incredible gymnastics, finding current soldiers or other soldiers to rename? And you slipped a minute ago. You said we're returning these bases to their original names. Robert E. Lee, leading general of the Confederacy, Pickett, the other names. Why are you doing this? I don't understand what the motivation is to rename bases for people who took up arms against their country on behalf of slavery. What possible motivation can there be for this? Who is telling you to do this? Who is urging you to do this?
Senator, the veterans and service members across the country who have deployed from Fort Bragg or Fort Benning or Fort Hood or Fort Pickett, there's a legacy, there's a connection to those bases and to those places, to what they trained for there, what they did for, and what they came home back to. That matters to them. Ask enough of them, as I do, all the time, before and later. And we recognize the service of those who were put into the replacement. No one's disputing that. I would never dispute that. What we're looking at is erasing history, erasing names, erasing base names that service members are tied to.
Talk
to people that serve at Bragg.
Recognizing
Ask people that serve at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning if they like the fact that the names have been returned. And to a man and to a woman, they will tell you, thank God we're back to Fort Bragg, and thank God we're back. And thankfully, because so many men and women in this country have served, there's a Benning and a Bragg and a Pickett and a Hood has a Silver Star or a Medal of Honor that we could rename the base to because of the limits of what Congress allowed us to do. So this is something we've been proud to do, something that's important for the morale of the Army, and those communities appreciate that we've returned it back to what it was instead of trying to play this game of erasing names.
We're not erasing history, Mr. Secretary. We're recognizing history and recognizing that mistakes have been made in this country. The greatest of all was the Civil War, where people took up arms against their country on behalf of the institution of slavery. And to continue the practice of recognizing those people and honoring them by the naming of these bases is, I believe, an insult to the people of the United States. Let me talk about the budget. I don't understand why the budget is coming to us in two pieces. Why not give us an honest base budget instead of putting a piece of it in reconciliation? As I understand it, OMB is saying we're going to have a flat defense budget for the next 4 or 5 years. Are we planning reconciliation every year from now on? Why not give us an honest budget, telling us what your priorities are, and then we can consider it. This committee always works in a bipartisan basis on the defense budget. We all want to see some increases in the defense budget, and yet you're giving us this this fake, here's a piece of the budget, here's another. You're cutting in the base budget, you're cutting shipbuilding in half and saying, well, we're going to make it up in reconciliation. Are we going to have reconciliation every year, which basically, by the way, puts a significant part, 10 or 15% of the defense budget in a wholly partisan decision-making process, whereas in the history of this committee, it's always been bipartisan. Why are we doing it this way?
Senator, from our view, the budget number 961 meets the requirements and threats that we face. And
That's not the number. The number is 892.6. You're adding reconciliation. That's my whole point. Why not give us a base budget of 961 or whatever the right number is, what you consider the right number, and then we can operate and make our decisions. Why do it in this bifurcated way that really is fooling the American people about what the defense budget is?
We're not trying to fool anybody, sir. It's two bills, one budget.
Haven't asked
We're
my question
working with
yet.
OMB,
Why is it
and
being done
we feel
this
very
way?
comfortable
Why is
with
it
the
being
number of
done this way?
961 billion.
Why don't you give us a straight up budget for the Defense Department? That's my question.
Senator, this is a straight-up budget for the Defense Department, and it's a
It is
13%
not.
increase over what Joe Biden
It is a
gave us.
two-part defense budget. Part of it is in reconciliation instead of in the budget that's being presented to this committee. This committee only has a partial review of the budget. I don't understand why we can't have an honest, straightforward budget instead of this son of Oko that you're putting over on us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That response did not just avoid the issue. It exposed something much bigger, a blind spot that has been hiding in plain sight. What comes next will challenge everything you thought you understood about this debate. Angus King pushed past the polite talking points and went straight for the heart of the issue. He wasn't interested in surface-level answers or rehearsed defenses. He wanted the truth exposed. This clash with Pete Hegseth wasn't about simple disagreements. It was about uncovering who controls the narrative and why certain legacies are still being protected. For decades, military bases have carried names that represent people who once fought against the very nation those bases are meant to defend. When King questioned why these names still exist, Pete tried to frame it as a matter of protecting history. But honoring rebellion and division under the guise of tradition is not preserving history. It is rewriting it. King's frustration boiled over when Pete tried to dodge responsibility, pointing fingers at veterans and vague community sentiment. King called him out directly, pressing him to admit what everyone in the room already knew. This isn't about honoring history, it's about preserving power. This is not about erasing the past, it is about refusing to glorify betrayal with taxpayer-funded monuments. If a soldier's emotional connection to a base depends on a name tied to those who oppose the country, perhaps it is time to ask what loyalty truly represents. King was not just calling for transparency, he was demanding moral clarity. If America stands for liberty, equality, and unity, then why are we still elevating legacies built on division and conflict? That question cuts deeper than politics, and it is one Pete struggled to answer. And when Pete finally tried to defend the process, King hit him harder, tearing into the so-called tradition argument. His message was clear. Patriotism isn't about clinging to symbols of betrayal. It's about upholding the values the country was built on. But the real explosion came when the topic shifted. The focus moved from symbolic names to something even more serious: the defense budget itself. King confronted Pete directly, exposing how billions of taxpayer dollars are quietly buried behind reconciliation tactics and procedural loopholes. Pete's answers faltered as King kept pressing, revealing that a massive portion of the defense budget is effectively hidden from both Congress and the public. Instead of presenting a clear and honest budget, the public is handed a fragmented document designed to confuse and conceal. When money moves through hidden channels, accountability vanishes. Priorities are manipulated, national security risks are ignored, and the taxpayers funding it all are left without answers. King's point was simple but powerful. If America is financing the most powerful military in the world, the people deserve full transparency. Every dollar should be accounted for. No tricks, no hidden cuts, no manipulation disguised as strategy. And here's the part that stunned the room. King exposed that if reconciliation continues at this pace, up to 15% of the defense budget could be shifted into partisan-only control, bypassing bipartisan oversight entirely. That's not just budgeting, that's gaming the system. Because if the Pentagon's numbers cannot survive scrutiny, the problem goes far beyond budgeting. It raises deeper questions about what exactly is being protected and who benefits from keeping the public in the dark. This hearing was only the beginning. What comes next could completely shift the balance of power and force Washington to confront truths it has been avoiding for far too long.